on the front of your sheet, we're going to talk about now that first stage then. Okay? So, one of the major things that we saw that we did with these reforms was the institution of more primaries and less caucus competitions. I'm going to explain the difference. I promise. We're going to work through it. Basically, a primary is an election and a caucus is a meeting. Prior to 1972, a lot more states had a caucus and very few states had primaries. Post 1972, it's the opposite. More states conduct a primary, fewer states conduct a caucus, though they both still exist, they just look a little bit different, okay? So our state has a primary. Like I said, that's the bulk of what most states do, and there are two kinds of primaries. We have an open primary and a closed primary. This is an example for you of what a primary is going to look like. Wish I could hone in on that, make that a little bit bigger, okay? All right, basically what this does is, if you were to look right here, this says this is the primary election in Harris County, and this says this is the Republican Party ballot. So these were all the people that were running for president. These are all the Republicans that are running for House of Representatives. These are all the Republicans that were running for Railroad Commissioner, like all the way through. And basically, this is every office that there is more than one Republican running for, or if there's a Republican registered, that for the people that live within that precinct. So that's what their ballot's going to look like, okay? Why are there no Democrats on this ballot?
Based on the party, like it's the primary election for that party.
Perfect. A primary is an intra-party competition. It is a competition only with Republicans. The Democratic primary is only Democrats on that ballot. You are not going to have a third-party primary. You're not going to have an independent party. You're not going to have a Green Party. You're not going to have a Working Family Party. You're not going to have any of that stuff. You're going to have a Republican and a Democrat because those are our major parties, okay? The other thing that you're going to find at the end is you're going to have different issues that you're voting on. When you're voting on those issues, it's not a law, it's not like a referendum. You're simply saying, as a Republican, this is what I think. So we're gauging people's perspectives, okay? So you read about the difference between open primary and closed primary. Monica, what was the difference in an open primary and a closed primary?
Shoot. Both was like limited to the candidates representing. I don't know. I remember.
It's limited to somebody, okay? Who wants to help? Thank you.
The closed ones are limited to people in the Republican, like, voter registration under the Republicans. And then the open ones would allow anyone.
Good. Okay. In Texas, we have what is called an open primary. So when you register to vote, you show up at your polling place on election day, and they'll say, Kendra will walk in, she'll show them her driver's license, and they'll say, Ms. Kendra, your first election, how exciting. Do you want to vote Republican or Democrat? And then she will make that decision right then, and that's what her primary ballot will be. In the next primary, they'll ask her again. I have voted in the primaries of both parties. Like, not both parties in the same year, but some years I voted in the Republican primary, some years I voted in the Democratic primary. If you live in a state that has a closed primary, you must declare when you register which party you are, and you can only vote in that primary.
For like all elections to come to?
Always. Unless you re-register with the other party. Which you can, but you would have to re-register and change your party affiliation. And from what I can tell, we're about half and half in our country. Okay? All right. Y'all real quickly there at your table, talk about the pros and cons. What can you think of, like, what's positive about these and what's negative or problematic?
I wish for like in my opinion, I wish like you could vote in the Democratic primary and then like one person can vote for both versus like so that way when you get to the convention or you get to like the national then you have your choice of two candidates. Like if you like vote the second, you like
Yeah,
vote
you
like
make your
your strong candidate, but that's cool. But like I don't think it's fair how people are limited to just identify as Republican or just identify as Democrat, you know?
Okay, I'm hearing some good stuff. Okay, so let's hear like what is your feedback? How do you guys feel about these systems? Who prefers the closed primary? You all prefer the open primary?
I don't prefer either.
You don't prefer either. Okay. Do a lot of you prefer the open primary?
Yeah.
Okay, Hannah, do you like it better? Why?
You have more options.
Okay.
It's like less of a hassle, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit of label. It's not gonna pigeonhole you, Andrew.
I think the closed primary presents a lot of good opportunities because let's say you already have one side, right? You're already dead set. Like if say you're only Republican or you're only Democrat, like you already made your choice, right? For which party you want to go for. It
Mhm.
allows you because even within each party, there are a lot of differences between like ideologies and
Mhm.
things that people believe in. Like there's some Democrats that believe in something that's different than other Democrats, and
Right.
vice versa with Republicans. So you really get to focus, spend more time on these different divisions and things that you want to really go for in terms of who you want to vote for and such.
That's a good argument, and it sounds kind of like what you're saying is that in a closed party system or in a closed primary state, you have more party commitment because the people have declared and said, "I'm of this party," and so they're more invested in the decision that that party makes. Whereas in the open primary, you probably don't have that as much. Can you maybe tell me positive, like what's a positive about the open primary though, besides the fact that it just doesn't pigeonhole you? How does an open primary give more voting opportunities?
Perhaps it would appeal more to swing voters, like in which who they want to vote for, and which what appeals to them in that time or place, basically.
Perfect. If you live in a closed primary state and you register as an independent, you're not allowed to vote in a primary.
Are you serious?
Well, because you haven't registered with the party. Because primaries are a tool of the party. So if you haven't chosen a party, then you're not contributing to that party.
So not fair.
Well, you live in an open primary state, so you don't have to worry. I did hear something you brought up, and I'm going to go ahead and address this in case you ever see it. Peyton brought up the idea. She said she wished you could vote in the Republican primary and the Democratic primary. There was actually a small time period in America where some states you could. It was called a blanket primary. And they would allow you, like they would have both on your ballot. So your ballot was really long, and it had the Republican candidate and the Democrats, and you would choose one for each. But that was ruled. There was a court case, and I don't remember the court case, but it was ruled as unconstitutional because the whole purpose of the primary is to like ally with the party and have that intra-party competition.
But I thought
So
they didn't want parties when they wrote the Constitution.
true that, absolutely true. So okay, all right. I mentioned earlier that not only do you vote on candidates, but you're also voting on issues for the party. Anybody tell me why the party chooses to put those platform issues on there? Jared, why would we put platform issues on our ballot? Because they're not binding. You're not creating a law by any means.
I have no idea.
All right, phone a friend. Majesty.
Is it like another version of polling, like to see where people
Yes,
what they
it
think?
is. And what is ultimately all of this leading to? Once we go through the primary and the caucus, what's going to be the step before we get to the general convention or the national convention? I'm sorry, the general election. I just said it.
The national
The national convention. So at the national convention, we do two really important things. We choose the presidential and vice presidential candidate, but we also approve the party platform. So this gives you a voter, a Republican voter in Collin County, precinct whatever, you get an opportunity to say, this is what my party stands for. This is what my party believes in. Okay? Hey.
Hey, I was gonna let you know, Dr. Stan and